That evening, the air in the house felt thick and heavy, like right before a thunderstorm. I was 13, and I was sitting in my room trying to assemble a model fighter jet, but my fingers just wouldn't cooperate, and glue was getting everywhere. The door creaked open quietly. It was Dad. He didn't turn on the light, and his tall figure was just a dark silhouette against the dim hallway. "Alex?" His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it had a steely hardness that always made me sit up straight. He came over and sat on the edge of my bed. He held out an old, worn-out smartphone. The screen was scratched, and the case bore the marks of many falls. I recognized it. It was his old work phone, the one he'd replaced a year ago. "Take it," he said. I took the phone hesitantly. It felt cold and heavy. "I want you to install this in your mom's room. Hide it so she won't find it. Turn on the recording when you leave." My heart skipped a beat, then started pounding so loudly I thought it was echoing off the walls. I looked at him, trying to see his face in the dark. "Why? What did this mean?" "Dad, I can't," I stammered. My voice was trembling. The thought of invading my mom's private space felt like sacrilege. Mom was my sun, my sanctuary. She smelled like vanilla and fresh baking, and her hugs could heal any wound. Dad squeezed my shoulder, harder this time. His fingers dug into my skin. "It's for your own good, son. For the good of our family. Sometimes to protect what you love, you have to do unpleasant things. I need to know the truth. And so do you." His words were like a poison, slowly seeping into my bloodstream. "For your own good." That phrase always meant I had to do something I desperately didn't want to do. "I don't want to know any truth," I whispered. "You'll have to," he cut in, his voice turning cold. "You'll do it. Tomorrow morning, when she's in the shower. Put it on the bookshelf behind the old photo albums. She never looks there." He stood up and left as quietly as he had entered, leaving me alone in the dark with that phone in my hands. It lay in my palm like a venomous spider. I felt like a traitor to the person I loved most in the world. Back then, I had no idea that this small, old phone would become a window into hell. That it wouldn't just show me the truth, but would shatter my world into 1,000 pieces. What I discovered. It broke everything I believed in. It destroyed my family. It destroyed me. It's still hard to remember that feeling when the person closest to you asks you to do something so wrong. It's a horrible, gut-wrenching loneliness. If you've ever been in a similar situation, forced to make an impossible choice, please share your story in the comments. It would mean a lot to know I wasn't the only one. And if my story has already resonated with you, let me know by hitting the like button. I could really use your support to keep going. The next morning was torture. I'd barely slept, tossing and turning, imagining the worst-case scenarios. The phone sat on my nightstand, its dark screen seeming to mock me. At breakfast, I couldn't look my mom in the eye. She was bustling around as usual, making me pancakes, smiling, and asking about school. Her smile, always so warm and genuine, burned me with guilt today. How could I betray her? Dad sat across from me, silently drinking his coffee and reading the news on his tablet, but I could feel his eyes on me. Heavy, expectant. He didn't say a word, but his silence screamed louder than any order. "Don't forget," it said. "Don't let me down." When I heard the sound of the shower running, a chill went through me. It was time. I grabbed the phone and walked down the hallway. On stiff legs, every step echoed in my head. The house, which had always been my fortress, suddenly felt like enemy territory. I was a spy, a saboteur in my own home. My parents' bedroom greeted me with the scent of my mom's perfume lavender and something sweet and floral. That scent had always calmed me, but now it made me feel sick. The room was flooded with morning light. Everything was in its place. The neatly made bed, the stack of books on the knitstand, her favorite throw blanket tossed carelessly over a chair. Everything was so normal, so peaceful. And I was about to defile this place. The bookshelf. Tall, made of dark wood, filled with books and family photos. On the top shelf, just as Dad had said, were dusty, thick photo albums with velvet covers. I stood on my toes, my heart hammering in my throat. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I slid it behind the albums, making sure the camera lens was pointed into the room. I started the recording. A small red light on the screen blinked once, then went dark. It was done. I slipped out of the room, closed the door behind me, and leaned against the wall in the hallway, trying to catch my breath. I felt filthy. The first few days of watching the footage were ridiculously mundane. Dad had set up a remote feed, so I could watch the live stream from my computer. I did it in the evenings, locked in my room, pretending to do homework. On the screen, I saw my mom. She would read, sitting in her chair. She'd talk on the phone with her friends, laughing about some TV show. She'd fold clean laundry, humming to herself. I felt even worse. I was spying on her most ordinary, innocent moments. My guilt was mixed with relief. Maybe Dad was wrong? Maybe his suspicions were just paranoia and nothing terrible was happening? But then I started noticing the little things. Small details that didn't fit the usual picture. Sometimes, late at night, after Dad had already gone to bed, her phone would ring. She wouldn't answer in the room. She'd pick it up and walk out into the hallway or onto the balcony, closing the door firmly behind her. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could see how her face changed. The smile would vanish, her shoulders would tense up, my inner conflict flared up with new intensity. Loyalty to Dad versus loyalty to Mom. Dad was my authority figure, my rock. He taught me how to ride a bike, fix things, be a man. I always craved his approval, but Mom was my heart. The thought that I was helping Dad hurt her was unbearable. One evening, I was sitting in front of my monitor. Mom was on the bed, typing something quickly on her phone. Then she suddenly froze, lifted her head, and looked directly toward the bookshelf. For a second, I felt like she was looking right at me through the camera lens, through the monitor, right into my soul. I flinched and slammed my laptop shut. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to stop this. But my fear of my father was stronger. What would he do if I refused? He said it was for my own good. What if he was right? What if he was trying to protect me from something awful, and I was just a blind kitten, unable to see the danger? The ticking of the clock on my wall sounded like a countdown to disaster. I was trapped, and the walls of my own room were starting to close in. Another week passed. I kept watching, no longer out of curiosity, but out of momentum and fear. Of my father. I became more observant, learned to read lips, however poorly. And that's when I started to understand. One evening, Mom went out onto the balcony with her phone again. The door was slightly ajar. I turned the volume all the way up, listening through the static and hiss. I could make out fragments of sentences. No, he doesn't suspect a thing, she was saying in a low, tense voice. I can't live like this anymore. You know that. Yes, I've packed everything. Just the essentials. Soon, I promise, very soon. Her voice was trembling. She wasn't talking to a friend. There was a man on the other end. I couldn't hear his voice, but Mom's replies painted a grim picture. Who was she talking to? What had she packed? Where was she planning to go? The next day, when Dad came home from work, he was furious. He didn't shout no. His anger was quiet, cold, which made it even more terrifying. He walked silently into his room, and then he called for me. Show me. The recordings, he commanded. We sat in front of my computer. I rewound to the previous evening. We watched as Mom walked out onto the balcony. Dad leaned in close to the speakers, his face like stone. He didn't say anything, but I could see the muscles in his jaw clenching. After that, he became even. More demanding. He wanted to know everything. What did she say? Who did she call? What was she texting? The pressure became unbearable. I felt like his watchdog. The climax came a few days later. Mom left her phone in the kitchen when she went to the store. Dad noticed it. He looked at me. The password. Do you know the password? I froze. I'd seen her enter it. A pattern lock, a simple zigzag. I nodded. Open it, he ordered. My fingers trembled as I swiped the screen. The phone unlocked. Dad snatched it from my hands and opened her messaging app. There was a conversation, with a contact saved simply as A. Dozens, hundreds of messages. I stood behind his shoulder and forced myself to read, feeling the ground disappear from fingertier from. Under my feet, I miss you. Just a little longer and we'll be together. He was angry again today. I'm scared. Don't be scared. I'll protect you. The money is in the account. The documents are almost ready. My boy, I don't know how to explain it all to him. My boy. That was me. They were talking about me. Mom was planning to leave, to run away with this man. And take me. With her? Or leave me behind? The thought made it hard to breathe. Just then, we heard a key in the front door lock. Mom was back. Dad quickly locked the phone and placed it on the table, exactly where it had been. He looked at me and put a finger to his lips. Mom walked into the kitchen, saw us, and froze. Her gaze darted from the phone to our faces. She knew. I had never seen such an expression on her face. It wasn't shame. It was pure, primal terror. She turned so pale she looked like she was about to faint. What were you doing? Her voice was barely a whisper. Nothing, dear, Dad said with an icy smile. Just talking with our son, about honesty. Mom grabbed her phone and, without another word, fled the kitchen. I heard the door to her bedroom slam shut. That evening, I tried to talk to Dad. Dad, maybe this is enough? We know everything. Maybe just talk to her? He whipped around. His eyes were blazing. You don't know anything, he hissed. You will do what I say? Understand? One more word to her, or to anyone else, and you will regret it. Do. You understand me? His threat hung in the air. I realized I wasn't just a witness. I was an accomplice. And there was no way out of this game anymore. I was trapped between the two people I loved most in the world, and they were both tearing me apart. The world collapsed. Not all at once, not with a deafening crash, but slowly, painfully, like an old building crumbling under its own weight. Everything I knew about my family, about my parents, turned out to be a lie. The house of cards I had thought was an impenetrable fortress fell apart at a single touch. I began to question everything. Every word, every gesture. When Dad said he loved me, I heard, do what I say. When Mom hugged me, I felt her fear. And thought, are you going to run away and abandon me? The house stopped being a home. It became a battlefield, soaked in lies and distrust. The silence at the dinner table was deafening. My parents barely spoke to each other, exchanging only short, functional phrases. Pass the salt. Are you picking Alex up from practice? Their faces were like masks, hiding a storm of emotions. My room went from being a sanctuary to a prison. I'd locked myself in for hours, but I couldn't escape the thoughts swarming. In my head, betrayal. The word pulsed in my temples. Everyone had betrayed me. Dad, who had used me as a weapon. Mom, who had been living a double life and was about to destroy our family. But the worst part was that I had become a traitor myself. I had betrayed my mom by spying on her. I had betrayed my dad because deep down I had begun to hate him for what he'd dragged me into. I had betrayed myself because I had lost all self-respect. The emotional roller coaster was swinging wildly. One moment, I was consumed by rage. I wanted to scream, to smash plates, to tell them to their faces everything I thought of them. The next moment, I'd fall into an abyss of despair, curling up on my bed and crying silently until the tears ran out. And then came the numbness, emptiness. As if all my feelings had just been switched off, flashes of the past would surface in my memory. The three of us at the beach, I must have been 7. Dad tossing me into the air and me squealing with delight, while Mom laughed on the shore, the sun glinting in her hair. U.S. decorating the Christmas tree, the house smelling of pine needles and oranges. Dad teaching me how to tie my shoes, and Mom reading me a bedtime story. Were those memories real? Or were they also part of the Great Deception? Maybe they were already miserable back then, just good at hiding it? These thoughts poisoned even the brightest moments of my childhood. It was all fake. My entire life, I stopped sleeping at night. I would lie there with my eyes open, listening to the sounds of the house. A creaking floorboard, a quiet cough, the sound of a car outside. Every sound seemed ominous. I was scared. Scared of what would happen next. Scared that I'd wake up one morning and Mom would be gone. Or that Dad would do something terrible. I'd look at myself in the mirror and not recognize the person staring back. It was a skinny, pale teenager with dark circles under his eyes and a haunted look. What happened to the cheerful boy who loved building model planes and dreamed of being a pilot? He was gone. He had been killed. Killed by his own parents. I was broken, destroyed, and I saw no way out of this nightmare. I was all alone with this shattered reality, and the fragments of my old world cut me with every breath. My patience snapped on an ordinary Thursday. I came home from school and the house was empty. Out of habit, I turned on my computer. The live stream. Mom was in her room. She was standing by the closet, taking out clothes and neatly folding them into a small travel bag. A sweater, jeans, a cosmetic bag. She was crying. Quietly, silently, the tears just rolling down her cheeks. She was doing it. She was leaving. Something inside me broke. A spring that had been coiled to its limit finally gave way. I couldn't be a silent observer anymore. I couldn't just let her leave. I couldn't let Dad win like this. I waited. I sat in my room, and time dragged on like molten lead. Finally, I heard the front door slam downstairs. Dad was home. I went down. They were both in the kitchen. Mom was standing by the window, her back to us. Dad was unpacking groceries. The atmosphere was so electrified it felt like the air was about to spark. I walked into the kitchen. In my hand, I was clutching the very same old phone that had started all this. I walked to the table and slammed it down on the tabletop. It hit the wood with a loud thud. Both of my parents flinched and looked at me. "What is this?" I asked. My voice was hoarse and alien. Dad frowned. "Alex, go to your room." "No," I said, looking him straight in the eye. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. "I'm not going anywhere. I want to know what this is. Why are you doing this? Why have you turned our home into a living hell?" Mom turned around slowly. Her face was wet with tears. She looked at the phone, then at Dad. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of pain and hatred. "It was you," she whispered, staring at Dad. "You made him your own son." I had to know the truth. Dad exploded, his composure shattering. "I had to know you were having an affair behind my back, that you were planning to run away." "An affair?" Mom laughed bitterly. "You call this an affair? I was trying to escape. From you. From your tyranny. from your control. You turned my life into a prison. You check my phone, my receipts, you control my every move. I'm suffocating. I'm taking care of my family, Dad yelled. And you decided to trade us for some loser you've been secretly texting. He's my cousin. Mom cried out and the words hung in the air. He's a lawyer. He was helping me get the divorce papers ready and find an apartment because I was afraid to tell you to your face. Afraid of what you would do to me or to Alex. I stood between them as their words flew past me like bullets. Her cousin, not a lover. She wasn't cheating. She was trying to escape. But that didn't make it any easier. A lie was still a lie. You're lying. Dad took a step toward her. No, you're the liar, she screamed back. You've been lying to everyone your whole life. You pretend to be the perfect husband and father, but you're really a monster. A controlling, jealous tyrant. In that moment, I saw something I will never forget. Dad raised his hand and slapped Mom across the face. It wasn't hard, but it was humiliating. The sound of the slap was deafening in the silence that followed their screams. Mom froze, her hand flying to her cheek. Her eyes filled with horror and disgust, and me. I just stood there and watched. I was in the eye of the hurricane, but it was as if I didn't exist. They didn't see me. They only saw their own pain, their own fury, their own hatred. I was just the excuse, the catalyst. For their catastrophe asterisk, I hate you, Mom whispered. Then she looked at me. The pain in her eyes was so deep it made my heart ache. She turned and ran out of the kitchen. A second later, I heard the front door slam. Dad was breathing heavily, staring at the empty doorway. Then he slowly turned. To me, there was no remorse in his eyes, only a cold, hollow rage. See what you've done? He said quietly, and in that moment, I understood. He was blaming me. I didn't answer. I turned and walked to my room. I closed the door, crawled under the covers, and finally, I cried. I didn't cry out of fear or hurt. I cried because on that day my family died, and I was the one who pulled the trigger. After that day, an icy silence fell over the house. Mom didn't come back. She called 2 days later when I was alone. She said she was staying with her sister, that she loved me, and that everything would be okay. Her voice sounded tired and broken. I didn't know what to say to her. I just stayed silent on the phone, and then she said, "Take care, kitten," and hung up. Dad moved through the house like a ghost. He barely ate, didn't watch TV, and only spoke to me when absolutely necessary. His anger had been replaced by a grim apathy. Sometimes I'd find him sitting in the dark living room, just staring at a single spot on the wall. He had lost, and he knew it, but he couldn't admit his guilt. To him, everyone else was to blame. Mom, her brother, me. I was alone. Completely alone in this huge empty house filled with the ghosts of the recent past. School became my only escape, a place where I could pretend I was a normal teenager. But even there, I felt like an outsider. I couldn't laugh at my classmates' jokes. Their conversations about video games and girls held no interest for me. I was living in a different parallel universe, full of pain and adult problems. To keep from going crazy, I started writing. I found an old notebook and began to write down everything I was feeling. It was my diary, my only silent confidant. Today is the 10th day since Mom left. Dad tried to make dinner tonight. He burned the pasta. We ate sandwiches in silence. Sometimes I feel like if I screamed, no one would even notice. I'm rereading Mom's messages, the ones I saw on that phone. My boy? I don't know how to explain it all to him. She was thinking about me. Did she want to take me with her? Or was she afraid of my reaction? I'll never know the truth. There's his truth, and there's her truth. But where's mine? I saw Dad crying today. He was sitting in the kitchen, just looking at her picture on the fridge. I wanted to go to him, to hug him, but I couldn't. There's a wall between. A wall he built himself, using me as a brick. The pages of the diary filled with my fears, my doubts, my anger, and my grief. I tried to piece together the puzzle from the fragments of information, but the picture that emerged was ugly and incomplete. Who was right? Who was wrong? Mom, who had deceived and planned to run, or Dad, whose control had driven her to it? There were moments of despair when it felt like this pain would never end. I would lie on the floor of my room, listening to sad music and feel myself being sucked into a black hole, but there were also glimmers of hope. One day, I found a bar of my favorite chocolate under my door. I knew it was from Dad. It was his clumsy, silent way of saying, "I'm sorry." I didn't eat it, but I didn't throw it away either. It just sat on my desk, a symbol of our broken communication. Another time, Mom called me. We talked for almost an hour. She didn't blame me. She told me about her new, temporary apartment, about the job she was looking for. She asked about my grades, my friends. It was an almost normal conversation. And at the end she said, "I love you more than anything in the world, Alex. Nothing will ever change that. None of this is your fault." I hung up and sat in silence. For a long time, I wasn't sure I believed her. Deep down, I still felt guilty. But her words were like a balm on a wound. A small island of light in the vast ocean of my sorrow. I realized that the healing process would be long, and that I would have to go through it alone, trying to glue the pieces of my soul back together. 6 months have passed. The landscape of my life has changed dramatically. Mom and Dad are officially divorced. Mom rented a small apartment in another part of town. I live between 2 homes now, spending weekdays with Dad and weekends with Mom. It's strange and unfamiliar. 2 different lives, 2 different worlds. Dad and I have learned to coexist. Our house is no longer a battlefield. It's become a quiet memorial to our broken family. We've started talking. Not about what happened, that topic is under a silent ban. We talk about school, about movies, about the weather. Sometimes he even tries to joke. I can see he's trying to bring back a shadow of the father I once knew. I don't hate him anymore. I feel a complex mix of pity, resentment, and some strange, crippled love for him. He is my father. That couldn't be changed. It was easier with Mom. She never spoke ill of Dad in front of me. She surrounded me with care, trying to make up for lost time. We went for long walks, went to the movies, cooked together. The fear was gone from her eyes. She seemed free. But sometimes, when she thought I wasn't looking, I'd see a shadow of deep sadness cross her face. She had lost a lot too. Grew up, not by a year, but by a lifetime. I realized that the world isn't divided into black and white. There are no absolute villains and no perfect heroes. My father isn't a monster. He's a weak, scared man who chose the worst possible way to deal with his fear of loss. My mother isn't a saint. She made mistakes too, choosing lies over an honest conversation, even if it was out of fear. They are both just people. Complicated, flawed, messed up people who caused each other and me unbearable pain. Accepting that was the hardest part. Accepting that your parents, your pillars of the universe, could be like this. Accepting that the perfect family I remembered from my childhood perhaps never even existed. The truth I discovered brought no relief. It didn't answer all the questions. It only created new ones. Did I do the right thing when I slammed that phone on the table? Should I have kept quiet? Should I have chosen a side? I still don't know the answers. Sometimes at night, I lie awake and replay those events in my head. I think about what would have happened if Dad had never given me that phone. Would we all still be living together in that big house, in the illusion of a happy family? Would That have been better? I'm not sure. My world was shattered, but I'm learning to live on its fragments. I'm learning to forgive, not for them, but for myself. To let go of this weight that presses on my shoulders. The future is a fog. I don't know if we'll ever be a family again in the true sense of the word. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully trust anyone again. This wound will stay with me forever, becoming a scar that will remind me of how fragile happiness can be, and how easily you can destroy everything you love. I often look at other teenagers, at their carefree faces, and I wonder, do they know what secrets the walls of their homes keep? What dramas play out behind the closed doors of their parents' bedrooms? Sometimes I want to ask someone, a random person on the street, you, tell me, what would you have done in my place? That's a question I still don't have an answer to. That's why I really want to hear your opinion. Write in the comments how you would have acted if you were in my situation. Whose side are you closer to? Or maybe there are no right sides here at all? Your point of view will help not only me, but also others who might be going through something similar right now. And if this story made you think, please subscribe to the channel. Here, we share the things that aren't usually spoken about out loud. Thanks for listening.